So with that, let me getting in. Like why we need the service life. That's the first question. If you are buying a TV, we are looking for specifications. Like it should have HD. I want 1020 DPI or 100K colors, 5K colors, and you are looking for other options like whether you have Android, whether it have compatible with Chrome and Mozilla dongles, whether it have warranty, all those things, how many years, all those things we are looking, which is there to keep it in a home, which is in a safe place, and it will be hanged on the wall. No one is going to touch it. Why? Because we are using a remote control. So even we don't touch the TV during the warranty time, even some 5-10 times even. That's the true scenario. But we are investing some around 30,000 or 50,000 at the worst case to get it. But on the other side, if you are looking for a building, the investment is almost your hard-earned money throughout almost your life, your 10-year, 15-year, or 35-year saving that will be invested into the building. Okay? And why we need to depend only on the 30th day strength. For example, if you are telling, like if you want to need a M30 grade concrete, you will check the strength on 28th day and you will be telling that it is M30. Thereafter, the building is exposed to almost 60 years, 100 years in a very different weathering environment, different climatic environment. So it's raining, okay, different seasons that we are having, temperature, a very high temperature nowadays we are experiencing. So all those things are almost like attacking the building. But how we'll give warranty for it? Okay, so no civil engineer will give a perfect warranty for it. So that's why hereafter, like we have to define while giving specification, as like how you are giving for strength, you should give specification for durability also. For example, like if you are giving specification for your slum during the first aid property, like first aid mix, you can check the property just by doing a slum code. If you are giving us 150 mm or 100 mm slum, simply while counting itself you can see. But how to see that whether the structure is performing for 60 years or not is the question. So that we want to give specification as strength and durability as like M, X and Dy. That is what the major objective of today's presentation. So what are the factors influencing as a civil engineers fraternity, how to improve that? So even if you are a builder or you are a client, how you can ensure that it is whatever the design mix and the durability parameter assigned is obviously like given to the structure, and we can expect a strong, like more durable. That is what the dire need of the current scenario. And where the problem starts is, though we use quality material, we use quality like testing, all the protocol. At the end, it is executed by most of the illiterate laborers, where a lot of errors can happen. In my talk today, I'll be covering about the major effects of poor cover, improper curing, improper mix designs. Okay, so that is the major talk. I'll be covering it. So why we need this to be very, very serious? For example, if you see, this is the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a steel bridge, it's not a concrete, which will keep on corroding throughout the year, and there will be a team assigned where they will be keep on cleaning throughout the year. So they will start at one end and they will finish at the other end at the end of it. This is a steel structure where the steel is exposed and we can see the corrosion. Even if it is the worst case, sometime what you can do, you can see where it is heavily corroded, you can repair. But if you are going for the case where most of the buildings are of concrete structures, here we are seeing a Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which is in Florida, where it was corroded within 13 years, and you can see how badly it is corroded. It means crores and crores of money was invested and it was wasted within 13 years because of the improper execution and improper inspection at the right time. What here the takeaway is, the buildings, concrete buildings are, the corrosion is happening inside the concrete building, which we cannot see. Only we can see with some physical changes that happens in the structure. So we should be very, very careful because we don't have a direct mechanism to capture the problem visibly. So what should be taken care of to ensure the durability? Of course, we have to protect the steel from corroding, because that is the major material that takes the tensile strength of the whole structure. So, like it's like a bone. If you don't have a bone in your body, you cannot stand straight. Okay. So, if you have a person who is of a like a boxer, who is capable of is a global champion, we can keep like that. But he have a serious cancer. If he is like will be dying within 2 years, then all his effort, all his whatever the trophies that he have win, the championship, everything will go away in 2 years. So like that, we should not leave your structure where you are constructing, you are investing. So whoever build a new home, they will be having a very good experience. That how curiously you will be selecting a material to build it. You will be going in many shops to pick what to put, what color, what kind of concrete. Everything will be picked. So that is the hardcrete which gives strength to the concrete, but the cover should be protected so that you will be having that building for long time. So you should have very strong and highly impermeable cover. How to create it? That is the question. And before that, what are the factors that influences for the corrosion initiation? That is the question. Influence our inputs with our inputs so that the corrosion can be delayed or avoided. So we have three different parameters which influences. The third one, if you see, that is the environmental parameter. It means where building is going to be exposed. Whether it is going to be in seashore, or it is going to be a city, or it is going to be in a village. So there, what is the aggressive species that will affect the building? For example, if it is a seashore, it is going to be a chloride. Then the other parameter which we cannot change is the design parameter. That's the second one. Where based on the coral provisions, we should give the cover depth. Okay, so we cannot go for, if it is given for 50 mm, you cannot go for 100 mm cover depth. They have a lot of practical issues. And also we should follow the guidelines for convincing our clients also. So what is in our hand is what material we are using to design and execute the building withstand the exposure condition. That is which is in our hand. So the material which we use is obviously concrete and steel for making a concrete structure. Where for the corrosion to initiate, if you see the figure on the right side, there is a black round, that is a steel bar, which have a cover depth, okay, where the red dots are the expected chloride if the building is exposed to seashore. So slowly the chloride will penetrate and it will reach the steel to initiate the corrosion. So it means the movement of chloride to reach the steel is one of the phenomena where your quality of concrete is the influencing parameter. You should make a very good quality concrete. Even then, if the chloride is getting and reaching the surface of the steel should have a capacity to withstand the corrosion. So that even the concrete is very bad, somehow, if based on your quality of steel and the resistance against the corrosion initiation, your corrosion initiation time will be delayed, thus your service life will be delayed. We will be looking mostly about the concrete and steel and what are the factors influencing for the changes that will happen in the concrete which leads to the corrosion initiation. Why the steel corrodes? Okay. Usually the concrete which is rich in high pH, it will be around 13 to 14 because of the presence of lot of alkalis. Okay. So that is well known, it will have more high pH of 13 to 14. But how it will reduce or why the steel corrodes? In the high pH, the steel will not corrode, that is well known again. It needs an acidic environment to initiate corrosion. At least we need at least pH of less than 10 to initiate corrosion. Okay. But how the environment is favorable for the steel to corrode? So usually the steel will not corrode at high pH because of the passive layer that have on the steel surface. Okay. Because of the formation during the manufacturing and also because of the formation of a very thin layer of cementitious. But how the corrosion occurs? Because of the oxidation, which we know, we call it as rusting, because of the presence of moisture and beyond that, what are the other reasons? Because of the chloride penetration and also carbon dioxide, which will collapse your concrete structure and it will create a lot of carbonic acid and which reduces the pH. So these are the major parameter which will initiate corrosion in this. So what are the other major corrosion mechanism that will lead for the initiation of corrosion is freeze-thaw, alkali silica, delayed intricate formation, sulfate attack, and many more we have in the list. But freeze-thaw in India, it's very rare, very close to Himalayas. We have few problems, but it's not a major problem in India. And we have a very good aggregates where we don't have alkali-based aggregates. We don't expect much of alkali silica reactions. Okay, and delayed intricate formation, it's a very rare case to happen. Again, it's not most of the time our climate condition is not so favorable for it. Sulfate attack, obviously we don't have because of very quality cements that most of the companies are manufacturing, and also our soil conditions and water, whatever we are using, doesn't have much of sulfate. The influencing parameters are chloride and carbonation, which is mainly from the sources outside of the concrete, the external forces that creates the corrosion. So these are the main two parameters, and how it is coming. What are the possibilities of this? Why we have to put this as the main focus of the topic? Okay. So as like how we define a globe, which have three types of water under one part of land. In India, it's almost 3 part. It is having a coastal, and all the coastal zone which have a major cities, you can see Calcutta, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, even Pune, or most of the cities. Okay, most of the cities it have near to seashore, where most of the buildings are exposed to quantities of pollution. Obviously, where you have a very high traffic, you are expecting a lot of carbon dioxide in the air, which leads to the carbonation. So it means India will be experiencing this, and a lot of studies have already done, and also saying that it should be taken as very serious issue, so that the upcoming engineers, you should be like considering all this parameter whichever I am discussing now, so that you can incorporate in your future specification. And specifications, we are taking about the specifications, we have a guideline from IS 456 which defines you the exposure conditions, okay, where it will talk about mild, moderate, and it will talk about serious, extreme. Okay. So mild, we know, doesn't have any weather issues associated from that. But if you see very severe, it means the concrete which is completely immersed in seawater. And if it is extremely severe environment, it means it will the structure which is exposed to very aggressive solids and chemicals. Okay, but it doesn't tell that how that deterioration mechanism is at a particular environment, and they didn't very clearly define what sort of changes that should be given based on the deterioration mechanism expected in different environments. That is missing. That is what we should be very careful. We should not have a same, we cannot consider severe for all the cases. Okay? Here they have given severe for the concrete which is exposed to severe rain, alternate wetting drying cycle, occasional freezing, okay, and severe condensation. But there are many other parameters which will create the situation very severe. So we should change all those recommendations given in the codal provision. If that is the case, how to test this carbonation and chloride, so that we can be finding how or where we are in, means the building which we have, whether it is seriously affected or not affected. That we have to find. For that, whatever the building you have, if you want to test, take a core of it, and what you do a phenolphthalein indicator test, which you have done in your school days. So which will tell you the level of carbonation, means depth of carbonation. If the concrete is very high quality, means good quality, it will be very pink. Pink means it is good, like a pink baby, which is innocent. If it is colorless, that means it is carbonated. But the question is how the carbonation happens. That is the biggest question. So we have a lot of carbon dioxide because of industrialization, because of heavy traffic, and many other parameters. Okay. So what this carbon dioxide does, it will get into the pores of the concrete, and if the moisture is present, what it will do, it will be like creating messy solid particle. That is by reacting with calcium hydroxide or CSH, which is there as a strength giving structure, and it will form like carbolic acid and will reduce the pH, and also it will form calcium carbonate. So because of that, the CSH structure, it will collapse, and it will allow all other aggressive parameters to move. This is one serious issue. And if you are looking into corrosion of steel, different mechanisms, one is by rusting, which is because of presence of oxygen and moisture, and the other one is chloride. So presence of oxygen and moisture, the corrosion will takes place, as like how we see everywhere. We can see the rust on the steel, where it will form a anode and a cathode in the same steel bar, and it will take the moisture and water and it will form ferric oxide, hydroxide. So this is a very common reaction, and here this will create a very uniform corrosion. So the corrosion will happen throughout the steel structure. It means throughout the steel bar which is there. So loss of metal that happens throughout the length of the structure will be less, comparatively less. I'm not telling that we don't want to bother, comparatively less. Where we should be very serious is the chloride induced corrosion. Why? Because here whatever Fe2 plus ions that comes out of corrosion, it will react with the chloride that is present near to the steel surface, that will form ferric chloride, and that ferric chloride, it will react with the moisture and it will form ferric hydroxide, the same compound which formed in the rusting. In addition to that, it will form HCl. Means we know that it's a hydrochloric acid. Obviously, that acid will reduce the pH. One. Then, what is the major issue? This HCl further, because of the reaction, it will break into like hydrogen ion as a hydrogen embrittlement, and again the chloride will be there. Again the same chloride, it will react with Fe2 plus ions and it will form ferric. This cycle will be keep on continuing throughout the life of a structure once the corrosion is initiated. So we call it as regenerating process. So we should be very careful for this chloride induced corrosion. Okay? And what is the major problem with that? One thing is a 7, like you can see the figures, a 7-wire strand which have a pitting corrosion. So that is the problem with the chloride induced corrosion. There you can see the pits. The pit means it will form a very small hole or indent, which will be at a very small area, cross-sectional area of the steel, which will go in depth and it will break. It will completely reduces the cross-sectional area of the steel, which cannot be detected by most of the NDT machines, whichever you are using for finding the cover depth or rebar locator or perfometer. Many instruments are available to see the diameter, to depth of cover, everything. But in that you cannot capture this type of corrosion. You will be thinking that the building is in a very good quality, but all of a sudden the building will collapse, which is a catastrophic thing. You cannot realize that it's how it happened. Only you will be seeing the corrosion after it collapses. So which is serious. And what happens if the corrosion happens? Obviously, it is going to increase its volume, because it will keep on oxidation. It will form ferric hydroxide, and if you form Fe, it will form Fe3 O2, and it keep on increasing its volume because of oxidation, which will exert lot of pressure, tensile pressure on the concrete, and it will be inducing a crack from inside. We know concrete is always weak in tension, and that too the crack starts in a circumferential way because of the steel rust, the expansion caused by the steel rust, and that induces fine cracks, and all those fine cracks will be of cumulative formation, which will allow all the aggressive species to reach the steel. So again, we are inviting the danger. That is the problem of allowing the corrosion to happen. How to choose the steel? Again, so we are using a TMT steel bars nowadays. But we know the steel bars, it will have a microstructure which is of inner and outer, where we call it as perlite and mortise. So where the outer periphery area, which is of hardened metal, bring into structure because of quenching, which is a part of a manufacturing process. Okay? So that is a very hard one, and inner part of the steel, which is a soft one, not soft exactly what you are thinking, comparatively soft, which is more ductile, which will be helpful for your earthquake resistance and all of things. Okay, so we'll be getting a very good advantage. But If you see most of the manufacturers who supply steel, if you try to see these two layers, most of the time two distinct layers are not completely formed because of the proper quenching process that they form. This one simply you can test wherever you want. You don't want any equipment like to see this. Okay, you can see in the naked eyes even. I will show you where all you need is some 5% nitric acid which will be added in isopropyl alcohol. Okay, and to get it in closer, I used a microscope and to see how it works. Okay, so I'll show a video of how the poor quality steel will be, how the good quality steel. So it's a very easy experiment anyone can do just by doing this experiment. I'll be playing a video which is of a bad quality. So a steel is polished well and it is exposing to a little solution, just 5% nitric. Okay. So it is reacting with the acid and you can see how the ring forms, outer ring. Okay. So you can see the dark like formation which is at the periphery of the steel bar. Okay. So you can see it is not uniform all around the steel bar. It means it is not, the quenching is not proper. So if you see how this good steel will be, I'm playing this video which is for a good steel. Okay. So you can see the same process just to like assess the quality of the TMT bar, where the same solution is placed, how the outer ring forms for a good quality steel. You can see it's forming, it's getting darker, very darker. You can see now it is completely dark. You can see the dark periphery at the end and it is very uniform. This is very uniform. So you can see now it is very clear. If you compare both this, if it is very clear. Okay. So that is what I have shown in this video, this presentation. So that is what I have shown here. Bad quality one and the good quality one. So what is the problem is, if there is a two different steel, it is composition of steel, it leads to like dissimilar metal corrosion. Or you might have seen in your home, you will be using the like galvanized screws and nuts and you will be bolting it in the alloy plates, where you see this galvanized steel at the junction of the nuts, it will be corroded. That is because of the dissimilar metal corrosion. So the same thing, it will happen in your structure, and the dissimilar corrosion is little bit faster when compared to the usual corrosion that we have. So this figure you can see where it is tested with many steel bars from different manufacturers or different sizes. Okay. So with the 8 mm, 12 mm and 16 mm, you can see with higher or larger the diameter of bar, the formation of this like ring is very good. But if you see 8 mm, in most cases you didn't see the proper formation of the periphery. It means there is no proper ring formation because of quenching. And what we have to take away here is, in a concrete, we are considering the cover depth from the center of the main bar. What is projected outside of that is this stirrups, okay, so which is mostly 6 mm or 8 mm bar, which doesn't have the proper formation of this ring. It means that stirrups are the main element that is going to get corroded. So if that is get corroded, then if you see, like, you will be losing your shear strength or buckling. Buckling can happen in columns and in beams where stirrups are lost. You will be like exposing a shear failure, or you will be facing a like deflection at the beams. So this will happen. So this is a very serious issue that we have to take care. So while buying a steel or even steel manufacturers, you should ensure that you are supplying or you are buying a very good. And what are the other issues that we should look for is, many of the companies, they are making a marketing strategy just to sell their product just by putting some catchy names. Okay? For example, 500 TMT bars, TMX 500 T bars. So this 500, it most of the time it will not mean that it is FE 500 as like FE 400. It will be just the brand name, as like how you are giving us i3, i5, i7 for a computer processor, or like that. It is another model as a brand name that will be using to like catch the customers. Okay, you should be very careful. Okay? And also, you should be very careful. Some companies, they are selling this EQI, earthquake resistant steels. Okay, there is no proper codal provisions to tell what is earthquake resistant, or the specification is not at all given. But many companies, with their own brand names, they will be putting as EQR 600, 500 just to market their product. So it really doesn't mean the earthquake resistant, because the earthquake resistant, it wholly steel as a material, it has the design, again how much steel it is used, lot of other parameters are there to tell you whether the whole structure is resistant against earthquake or not. So we should not run behind this type of catchy words. We should be aware. And also, you can see there is no proper ISI certification on board. While buying a material, always you look for the IS standardization if you have in a proper way. But also, you should have the genuine ISI license name. These are all very important things that you should be very keen about. Because with the same 500, 700, everybody will start selling the same product. So that is very, very dangerous. You should not be like a victim for. And if you are, even if you are buying a good quality steel, how you are storing, again that is a major issue. IS 4082, that gives a very clear like recommendation to how to stack the construction materials, not only steel, all the materials and components inside. Okay, so here I'm listing how the steel should be stored and how it is stored nowadays. You can see the figure on the top. It will tell you how we handle the material, how we'll stack, and the bottom picture will tell you how it should be stored. So it should be completely marked for its diameter, for its grade, and always you should have almost some 15 to 20 centimeter like space between the ground and the steel. So the advantage is, whenever it rains or any like moist air comes, it will get into the steel, but when it's sunny, it will get dried out, so that you won't have much effect of the rusting. So that do not happen. Even if it rains, it will drain out. So that is the main advantage. Okay? And also try to keep it in a covered or closed environment, like a warehouse. So that is the like suggestion given by the Indian standard. So we should try following. So these are on the like how to get a steel and how to store. But how to stop corrosion? What are the parameters we should be thinking of? So here, as I told, if your quality of concrete is very bad, it will the abrasive drum will reach the steel and it will initiate corrosion. So the level till which the like steel resist the corrosion is what we called as chloride threshold. So that one is the main parameter that we have to determine. Okay? So how we can increase the resistance against the corrosion? We have a number of technologies, like we can make a good quality concrete. But I'm touching a little bit a different area, that is using of corrosion inhibitors, which will form a very dense passive layer so that it won't corrode. Okay, even if the quality of concrete is not good, or you have restriction getting materials, or you have quality issue, if you are using inhibitors, then you will be like getting a good quality concrete. And there are different inhibitors available in market. We call it as anodic inhibitor, cathodic inhibitor, and the combination of both we call it as bipolar inhibitor or mixed inhibitor. Okay. So the anodic inhibitor and cathodic inhibitor, it will inhibit at only at one end where it is a cathode or anode, but there will be some reaction that will happening at both the points, and it will tend to reach the equilibrium to have the corrosion to happen. So these both are not advised, though anodic inhibitors are not commonly used. So what is advised is going for a bipolar inhibitor, which is available in market nowadays, which will be inhibiting at both anode and cathode, okay, by its different mechanism. I don't want to get much into the inhibitors, but when comparing to anodic or cathodic inhibitor, these bipolar inhibitors are the best. Okay, so we have results. I will show you that also, so that you can realize how like better it is when comparing to the traditional methods. Okay, so we have test like protocol and methods to test the corrosion initiation, corrosion propagation at different with different mixed proportion, with different chlorides, different water cement ratio, whatever the parameter that you are going to change in your site, we can create the same environment and we can test whether the which environment is better or which inhibitor is better, or even if you are trying to use different steels like from a different manufacturer, you can find which manufacturer steel is better for your requirement. So all those things you can find with the test procedure which is available. So here what we do is we will be exactly finding how much of chloride is required at the steel surface, where if you are considering this as a specimen which is at the left corner, which is marked as a red box, where the corrosion have occurred, and we will be collecting the mortar specimen and we will be finding the chloride concentration. Okay. So this, by this we will find what happened at the steel surface, which is exactly replicating what will happen in your real structure. So that is the purpose of this testing. So with that you can see I have compared chloride resistance or threshold value between the cementitious system which doesn't have an inhibitor and which have a bipolar inhibitor. So if you see without the inhibitor, it is around, the threshold value is around 1% by weight of cement. If you're going for bipolar, it is around 2% weight. If you're going for anodic inhibitor, it will be around 1. Means by using this bipolar inhibitor, you can getting a double time of the corrosion resistance. That's what it means. Okay. So here you can see the chloride threshold level, which varies with the increase in the dosage of corrosion inhibitor. Okay. So where we have tried with OPC and PPC, where OPC doesn't have any inhibitor, and PPC we tried with 0% and 0.5 and 1% of inhibitor. Okay. And you can see even with the increase in the dosage, you can increase the threshold. So that is one of the major advantage. So obviously we have to find what is the optimal dosage that is required for the steel corrosion to happen. That is very important. And we have to see what sort of PPC that we have to use. That is also influencing. And also water cement ratio, which plays a very important role in increasing the threshold level if you are going for a bipolar inhibitors. For example, we tried with 0.4 water cement ratio, 0.6 water cement ratio, and you can see with two different water cement ratio, we tried with different dosage of inhibitors with 0, 0.5 and 1%, and with 0.6 we tried with 0 and 1%. So if you see with 0.4 water cement ratio, with the increase in dosage, you can see the increase in the threshold level. But with the water cement ratio of 0.6, with the increase in dosage, you couldn't get the expected threshold level. Why? Because these admixtures are diluted and it losing its efficiency. Okay, so that is the major problem. So always it is recommended to go below 0.5 water cement ratio if you are using any inhibitors, not only bipolar inhibitor or anodic inhibitors, any of inhibitor. It's always better to go with 0.5 water cement ratio, and you can get your slump with your classes. You can play with. And compressive strength, even not only the threshold level, if you are not properly choosing your dosage. Okay? So here it is a bipolar inhibitor, where the manufacturer they have given a recommended dosage for a particular cement content. Okay? So which we have followed, which is mentioned as RD, which is recommended dose. And the left side graph box which is shown from RD, it is a dosage which is less than the recommended dosage of -20 and -40, and the dosage which is on the right of RD is +20 and +40 of the recommended. If you see with the case of no inhibitor, which is at the left end, the strength is around 35 to 40, and also in recommended dosage it is again we are getting the almost similar strength. But if you are reducing or increasing the dosage, you are getting a less strength. So choosing a dosage to achieve appropriate strength and also durability is the concern. Okay. So this is happening why? Because of not properly maintaining the water cement ratio. So that again it creates a problem and it leads to the permeability. So dosage is also an important parameter. Other problem that we face is how to find whether the inhibitor is used by the builder while building or making concrete artwork. For example, if you use a super plasticizer, performance will be seen immediately while concreting. Okay, but the performance of the inhibitor you will see only after few decades, after 20 years, 20 years, which is not at all visible. Okay, so we don't have proper techniques. So those who are researchers or like enthusiast people who like to work on chemistry or non-destructive techniques, we are expecting some test method as like how we do for carbonation, where just by simply spraying you will be knowing the depth of carbonation. Just by spraying on the concrete, okay, maybe chipped off or patched it, then if you can spray on, if you can get some color when you have a corrosion inhibitor, or this is a question for the participants, so you can look into it. This is the open like option which is given. It's like a challenge for us. Okay? And even if you have a good quality concrete which is made, concreting is done, curing is very important. You know, obviously it will give strength and water tightness and abrasion and freeze thaw and volume stability. But how long we have to cure, and how to see importance or influence of proper curing. Okay? So you see a graph which shows the compressive strength with respect to the A. So there we have taken some 4 cases where a light brown color is the case where it is cured at the laboratory, not with water, only with air. We didn't expose to any ponding or moist curing. The second case, which is of green color, is 7-day cured in moist, as like how we do, or ponding, and then it is exposed to air for 1 year. And then the third case where 28, which is in red color, cured for 28 days and exposed to air for 1 year. And the fourth case, which is a dark blue line, which is moist cured, okay, throughout the entire time of the exposure. So here, if you see the case where it is not properly cured, it means air cured, it is giving only less than 30 MPa on 90 day, which looks similar on 28th day. There is no much difference. But if you see the variation in the strength after almost 60 days, you can see a major difference in the strength. So what is emphasized is at least you cure for 28 days, and if you are using any secondary cementitious materials or flyers or anything, make sure you are curing for like 28 days or more if possible, so that you will be getting a very high strength, rather putting lot of OPC thinking that OPC will give you strength. It will give you strength obviously, but you can save money just by using flyers and a proper curing. So that is a very important takeaway. And how this strength is achieved just by curing? No, again, these secondary cementitious materials which are rich in silica, it will take your free calcium hydroxide which is there in your cementitious system, which forms when the cement hydrates when reacting with water, and that will form more CSH. It means the CSH is the calcium silicate hydrate, which is the strength giving compound and which makes the concrete very impermeable. So if you have double time of CSH, you will be getting an increase in strength and very much impermeable layer. So use of secondary cementitious materials like silica fume, slag, flyers are like recommended. So we'll see how it influences on your durability. So here we are looking for diffusion coefficient, which have the concrete with different water cement ratio. Okay. So now just by making a proper proportioning based on the water cement ratio, you can achieve a very good reduction in your diffusion coefficient. Means your diffusion coefficient means nothing, the rate at which the aggressive environment like chlorides, it will move from the cover to the steel surface. Okay, the rate of movement of aggressive ions. Simply you can take. So you can see from 0.3 to 0.6 compared for 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, changing in one order. Okay, so it is always recommended to go for a lower water cement ratio to have a very good, like good or reduced diffusion coefficient. Main parameter to have a very less water cement ratio. Okay. And again, if we are using silica fume, that is see what is the impact of silica fume. So if you are comparing the diffusion coefficient of silica fume with the Portland cement concrete, that is the ratio which is given on the y-axis with the percentage of silica fume used for the different concrete. Where if we consider there is no silica fume, it means 0, where we are taking the ratio as 1. If you are going for almost 5%, that is more than enough to reduce your diffusion ratio to 0.2. So that is a major impact that you can see just by using the silica. This is another parameter which will be telling you the importance of using the secondary cementitious material. And then importance of having different. So you will be having a question, which one I can pick for my requirement. So for that case, so here this graph shows age in years for the range of 28 days, 1 year, 10 year and 100 years. Okay, and it shows the diffusion coefficient, and also you can see it is marked as 28 days, where it is almost 0.1 year, almost 28 days, where if you see the diffusion coefficient is almost similar. If you see, if you are checking on 28 days of a concrete, it is almost similar. You will tell that there is no effect of using secondary cementitious material. Why we have to use fly ash, why we have to use slag, or why you have to use some other cementitious material. But if you see, with the increase in age, you see 40% use of fly ash, it is changing the diffusion coefficient almost in 1 order. When comparing to the case which is in blue color, that is the Portland cement, which is nowhere comparable. That's why it is very, very important to use the secondary cementitious material. And to test this, n number of different type of test methods available. I'm not getting into all this. Just I'm showing you so that you will take a screenshot of this, or I think it may be recorded so that you can get the video and you can do all the tests to get the different influencing parameters. Just like how I show for diffusion coefficient, you can find all other influencing parameter which leads for the corrosion to happen. And we'll get into the service life part. We got diffusion coefficient. I'm talking about threshold level. So how to use it, how we can find, if I know this number, to see how much years my structure will perform. That is the main content of today's talk. So here, as I told, so as the time goes on with the increase in the exposure time, the chloride ions, which is shown in red color, that will move towards the steel bar, which is shown as black circle, and it will initiate the corrosion. So that phase is called initiation phase of a service life. Once the corrosion is initiated, it will move towards the it will start propagating. It means the corrosion will happen, and you can see the rust stains and the cracks that appear on the concrete. So our main objective is to stop the corrosion initiation. That is the very easiest way, rather initiating, corroding, and then stopping in the propagation. It will take a lot of money from your pocket to repair and estimate this initiation phase with the durability parameters that we have seen using threshold, diffusion coefficient. For that, I will be showing this software in many places. It is the free software which you can download at free of cost from life-365.org. So with this software, the advantage is you can try with the different water cement ratio, you can try with different inhibitors, different steel, different mixed proportion, and different exposure conditions you can test. Okay? And it is developed by world leading chemical admixtures and even manufacturers, and even ACA is a part of it. Okay, so which is developed based on some standards which is developed by ACA, that is ACS 360. So it is little bit reliable, but not completely a one-point source for all your. So here I'll be walking through the software just by taking a few cases where, example, a bridge is there in a seashore, which have 50 mm cover, which have a conventional TMT rebar, where the variability is with water cement ratio of 0.4 and 0.6. Okay, and it have a different secondary cementitious materials of 15% silica fume and 15% fly ash, and combination without it. Okay, so these are the combinations. So I'll be quick walkthrough into the software. The software interface, so where you can define the depth of your reinforcement and what type of structure it is. This is more than enough. Okay, and where the structure is exposed, and what will be the temperature that is faced in the particular place here, and what is the humidity, and what is the expected chloride or some other aggressive environment that is expected at the place. That will be given, or you can see the new art is given, or you can define for your place. You don't want to like it now. You have only a few places which is certain place, but you can give your own custom temperature, humidity, and your own aggressive. And this is the major like main component where you can define your water cement ratio. For example, which is on the red box, which will show you the water cement ratio of 0.2, and the slag which is used as 25%. It's a screenshot to show. And silica fume which is used as 10%, and black steel is used and inhibitor is not used. So these are the parameters which comes in there for this screenshot. So like that, what I'm trying to emphasize is you can give your own situation where the building is going to be constructed. So with that, you can find when the corrosion will initiate. That is the major outcome of the software. So I'll be putting you my inputs, and I'll be telling you how much time it will take for the corrosion initiation to happen. For that, if you see the case where the high water cement ratio of 0.6 and there is no fly ash or silica fume, which is expected to initiate corrosion in 45 years. But if you see the case 3, which have only 0.4 water cement ratio and it doesn't have any SCM, which is having 61 years, it means 15 years more like corrosion initiation. If I'm taking the case 2, which is with 0.6 water cement ratio, but I have 15% fly ash, it is giving almost 10 years additional. It means 54 years to initiate corrosion. So again, if I'm going for 0.4 and 15% fly ash, it is 81. It is almost, when comparing to 45 years, it is 81 years. It is almost. If you are taking the situation where you are using silica fume instead of fly ash with some 15%, which is very high, with different water cement ratio of 0.6 and 0.4, it is 103 and 180, which is nowhere comparable with your 45 years. It means you can double or prolong your service life. That is for sure. So you don't want to think that the use of SCM is to save money or use the waste. It is really that is there to support you to enhance the durability of the. So here is a comparison. So for example, if I'm using a like OPC and PPC, and if I'm using a corrosion inhibitor in a case, the different dosage, you can see how much time. Actually, I tried with the same software, and I'm showing you with the data which I got from the field experience. And here you can see how the time required for the corrosion initiation to happen. For example, if you don't have any inhibitor in the case of OPC, which is expected to have corrosion initiation is 45. But if you are using PPC, this is very, very important. Simply, you don't want to use any inhibitors or anything. Just I'm using PPC of 15%. You can see the increase in the like service life is almost 80. So that is the major takeaway. Here the water cement ratio is 0.4. Okay, and if you are using inhibitors, corrosion inhibitors, further to increase your service life with 0.5 and 1% of dosage, you can see it goes beyond 120 if you are going for 1%. So it means that you can increase your service life by 30 years by changing the case a little bit, which is going to cost you a little in the beginning. So that is what the very important thing. And if I'm not using any PPC, I'm just using only the inhibitors. With the OPC concrete, if the concrete which is expected to corrode in 9.2 years, if I'm going for bipolar inhibitor, it is going to corrode in 32 years. Means almost 3 times the service life, which will be increased because of the use of the corrosion. And the importance of cover depth, that is a very important parameter that we miss usually in the site where we don't maintain the proper cover. So here in this graph, I have compared a situation where you are using 30 mm cover, which is a green line, 40 mm cover, which is a blue line, and 50 mm cover, which is a red. So all the scenario is same just by varying the cover depth of the building of a particular section. You can see if you have a 30 mm cover, which is expected to have a corrosion initiation in 20 years, just by increasing the 10 mm of cover, you are getting 32 years of service. You are using another 10 mm, you are increasing to 46 years. It means almost just by providing a 10 mm proper cover, you can increase your service life for almost 65%. It means almost double. Like if you're telling in a point wise, it is 22. like 32, so 1.5 times. So inside we should ensure always that the adequate cover is provided. That is very extremely important. For that, we usually recommend to go for cover block rather than putting a bricks, waste bricks. Why? Because waste bricks, it will crumble into pieces while we are moving the trolley and while we are walking, and because of the friction that created because of the jerk that happened during the movement. And many plastic cover blocks are also available, but that is in that case, if you see, it won't have a proper like bonding with the existing concrete. So it's always better to have a concrete which have a similar strength and transport properties of the concrete that you are making. It's better to make a cover block with the same concrete that you can make. Okay, and if you are a builder, it's better put a specification rule where you will be checking the cover depth, and based on the variation in the cover depth or integrity in the cover depth, you will be taking a penalty, so that whoever the builder, they will ensure that they will maintain a proper cover. Why? Because you don't want to use any SCM, you don't want to play with water cement ratio, you don't want to use bipolar inhibitor. Just by using or making a use of quality control in getting the cover depth, you will be getting a very good quality concrete and a very high durable structure. This is the nomograph which we have developed. Okay, I'm talking about softwares, different parameters, this and then, which will be a big headache for a field engineer who is new to this subject. So this is a simple nomograph where you can take a printout of it and you can use it in your office. This is a development stage, yet it will be going to be expecting to be a part of IS like 516, where the IIT Madras team is working on. Okay, so where if you want to have a service life, expected service life of 50 years or 100 years, how to choose the material, how to choose my cover depth. Okay, so here in my case, the variability is the depth of cover, probability of having a corrosion initiation, and the type of binder I'm going to use, and what is the durability parameter that I'm going to take. So here I'm starting with the graph which is at the left top, which is showing a DNPF. It means depth of cover and probability of corrosion. Why I'm starting from here is the depth is almost fixed because of the designer's rule, which we cannot control. The site engineer cannot control. Okay, and then the probability of corrosion, that is the quality that the management team expects. Okay, here in this case, I'm taking almost some 0.2% of like 20% of probability. Same simple. Okay, so that is the first graph. The second graph, which is on the top right, which is mentioned as binder, where again this graph is helpful to choosing your mixed proportion based on your availability of the resources. Somewhere you will have fly ash, somewhere you will be having slag, somewhere you don't have any of these resources. You will be going for only corrosion inhibiting mixtures, or like this. The different scenario will exist at the different place where you are constructing. Okay, so that before fixing all this service life expectations, we want to see what material is available at a site, so that you can pick from those material and you see what you can do with the material to enhance your service. That is the, again, that it is on the pocket of the management side, and because it takes a lot of cost in what material you are using, the mixed proportions. Okay, it means materials, base materials that you are using. Whether you are using slag, you are going to transport 100 kilometers, or you are going to use fly ash, which is available within 10 kilometers. Those scenarios. Okay, and the third graph, which is at the right bottom, which is mentioned as DCA, that is to define the diffusion coefficient. So here we have given almost 11 cases with a different concrete with different mixed proportion. Okay, so this diffusion coefficient, it is one of the parameter which influences the service life. Again, whoever joined late, for them I want to tell that this is the rate at which the chlorides or aggressive environment that will move towards the steel surface to initiate corrosion. So for example, if I want to have some 25 years of service life without corrosion, then how to get it? Okay, which to choose? So I'm starting with the arrows which is given as A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so where with the management decision of a probability of 20%, if it is there, as per the design guideline given by the designer, where we have to give at least some 35 mm of cover. So now the management, that is at the B point. So with this input, now the management team, they have to choose what material is available near. Okay, I have given 5 cases here with some greater than 50% slag or fly ash, which have OPC and corrosion inhibiting nature. And if you see the 5th case, which is less than 10% silica fume and 10 metakaolin and OPC, something. Okay, so like that 5 cases are there. So like that, in your case, you will be choosing which material you want to take. So again, this graph is in development stage. Here we are going to make it a little bit simple rather in choosing this material, but it will happen later. So like this, you can choose based on the binder which is available for you. Okay, then that is at the point C. Here in this case, I have chosen the type 4, which have low lime calcined clay cement of less than 10%, and which have silica fume like OPC. And now with this available binder, how quality concrete I have to make for getting a expected service life of 25 years, I have to choose the diffusion coefficient like number 2, which is 2 into 10 power of minus 12 meters square per second, per second. Means that is the unit which is given for the diffusion coefficient. Now the concrete engineer, with the availability of materials, you have to make trial and error to achieve this 2 into 10 power minus 2 meters square per second of chloride diffusion, so that you can ensure that you will be getting a 25 years of chloride service. So this is the easiest way. So if I'm going in a reverse order, for example, a builder who wants 100 years of service life, now it's a reverse order. For example, you consider the graph which is at the lower right, which shows 100 as a chloride free service life. And if I'm taking the chloride diffusion of case 1, which is 1 into 10 power minus 2 meters square per second. Okay, that is the case. You will be forced to choose the case 4, so of concrete, which is having LC3, and you should be, if you are checking for your cover depth, if you move towards the point, you need at least 50 mm cover depth if you want 100 years of service life. And if you are picking case 1, criteria 1 as your diffusion coefficient, it is 1 into 10 power minus 12. Then if you are choosing the binder, which one you want. For this case, I'm taking 4. Okay, if you are directly move towards that, and all you need is 50 mm cover to achieve a 100 mm service. Okay, so like that, based on the quality that you can bring into the site, you can choose your binder, you can choose your mix proportion, and you can choose your cover depth. And as we don't have option to choose your cover depth, so cover depth will be fixed to a independent parameter, and the dependence will be modified for your requirement. So by the way, whoever makes concrete, you can define the mix as I want a concrete of M30 grade, and also you can tell you need 100 years of service life. Okay, so that is what the concept of this whole talk, where you can make MX and DY. Means MX means M30 grade of concrete, and diffusion coefficient of 1 into 10 power minus 12 meters per second, so that it will ensure that you will be getting a 100 years of service life for the concrete. So summary of today's presentation is, we have to use fly ash and other industrial byproducts as which is a secondary cementitious materials, which gives you very durable structure, and proper curing and giving proper cover depth is very important to ensure your service life. And the influence of SCMs that we have seen, not only on strength and also the long-term performance, is very clear with the studies we done throughout the world. It is proven, and now we have learned about some of the tools which is available, and field engineers, you can think of going for this type of nomographs, which will be useful for define the service life of a structure. So with this, I am acknowledgement, which will be of course it is given to IIT Madras, where I did my PhD, to all my profs, guides, well wishers, everybody there, and all my BDCM research group at IIT. So with this, I am thanking everyone, all the participants, and again the organizer for this wonderful opportunity to share what I have learned. Thank you so much.